Hi, welcome to Out of Book Chess. We're continuing with our analysis of the incredibly famous, if slightly fantastical, match between Bobby Fischer and Anatoly Karpov. If you haven't seen Game 1, you should watch that for some context. Like Game 1, which also features Fischer as white, we have another closed Ruy Lopez opening. In fact, in many ways, the Spanish opening serves as a backbone for the entire match. As you may or may not know, the match itself ran for 32 games, and overall, Fischer and Karpov played 7, featuring the Ruy Lopez, a complex battlefield that both men knew. And it will be intriguing to compare and contrast these games to see how each player adapted their strategy as the match progressed. And by the end, I think you'll find there is a clear victor. Since we covered many elements of the closed Spanish in Game 1, we won't repeat those here. And since we have many games to cover, we won't focus on every move. So with all that said, let's begin. White's first 9 moves of Game 3 are identical to Game 1. Black's 9th move departs from this now, and whereas Karpov played knight a5 in Game 1, the Chigorin, here he plays instead knight b8, the Breyer Defense. The Breyer Defense kicks off with a very strange looking move as it seems to undevelop Black's queenside knight. Just like White has a general game plan with their queenside knight that involves traveling from knight d2 to knight f1 to either g3 or e3, Black's queenside knight also has a game plan to hop from b1 to d7 and then often c5 after the c pawn is pushed to c5 and then c4. Next comes several book lines. There's a lot of theory you may be interested in studying regarding these moves, but to do so is beyond the scope of this video. To summarize, White goes for central and queenside space, while Black tries to pressure the center, in particular the e4 pawn. White plans to push his d-pawn and lock down the center. It is common for Black to try and attack White's structure with a timely c5. White would likely respond with d5, and Black with c4. And this is what the pawns look like in many closed Spanish games. It's notable in this one that Black hasn't yet committed to c5, and instead holds his pawn back so that if and when White plays d5, he can reply with c6. Black's next move is knight b6, another curious looking move. He is baiting White into playing a6, clarifying the queenside and hopefully overextending. Whether White has overextended or not remains to be seen. Black loses a tempo returning to d7, and we'll see in the end if this move was worth it, or if Black simply played too passively here. After this, White develops his bishop and connects his queen and rook. Black plays rook b1. White develops his rook to the c-file. Karpov plays bishop a8. You'll notice in several of the Spanish games we'll look at, Karpov's bishop winds up on this square. From here, it commands the a8 h1 diagonal, where it could either become a fearsome piece or wind up dormant if White's pawns, after the queen's pawn advances to d5, cannot be cleared out from the center. White next plays d5, and Black replies with c6. The pawns are exchanged. White next plays bishop c3, preparing to push c4. And Black retreats his bishop back to a8, so that if White does push the c-pawn, the bishop isn't hanging after the pawns are exchanged. While this move is not a bad move and is actually recommended by the engine, in hindsight, Black should have probably played h6 to prevent White's next move, knight g5. Similar to game 1, now that the queenside has crystallized, White switches to a kingside attack. He is threatening the f7 pawn. Black responds with rook e7. Next, queen e2, developing and helping to guard the e4 pawn. Black next plays the central pawn break d4, and this move is the beginning of where things start to go wrong for Black. On first inspection, it looks like there's nothing wrong with this move. After all, Black's position is fairly cramped, and this will result in the pawns being exchanged and opening up the diagonal for his a8 bishop. But after e takes d5, knight takes d5, Black's pieces are not nearly as well coordinated as White's. And Fischer is going to capitalize on this fact by overwhelming Black's fragile center, leading it all off with a clever sacrifice. When Black tries to kick the knight away with h6, White plays knight f7. This is a great move I never would have found, because at first you don't see an immediate benefit to giving up the knight. Black simply recaptures with the rook. But Fischer next plays a beautiful new threat. Take a moment, if you would like, and pause the video to see if you can spot it. The move is rook on c to d1, hitting the d5 knight, which is now attacked twice and only protected once. Okay, so what can Black do about this? Well, he can't really move the knight because it's now pinned to the rook. I mean, he could move it, but it won't help him any. Let's say he tries to play knight f4, counterattacking the queen. Now White has queen g4, threatening the knight on d7, which is only protected by the queen and also pinned to it. And Black is in real trouble. Let's say he plays h5, attacking the queen. White can do all sorts of things, but the simplest is to just win the rook with bishop f7 check. And the king cannot recapture, or else rook takes d7, wins the queen next. Ouch. Moving the knight to other squares meets with similar problems for Black. He can't play knight f6 because after White takes the knight, Black can't recapture with his other knight that is pinned to his queen. So he can only retake with the pawn, which opens up his kingside, loses his rook, and its mate in short order. If he plays knight c7, queen h5 threatens the rook. The rook cannot move, and if Black protects the rook with queen e7, White has queen takes f7 check, queen takes f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7, rook takes d7 check, king g8, rook takes c7, and Black is busted. So Black finds the best option for him in this situation is playing the knight on d7 to f6. This adds 2 defenders to the d5 knight, which is unfortunately for now pinned to his queen. It also attacks the e4 knight and guards the g4 square. White, though, isn't letting up and trades knights with knight f6 check. After the recapture, queen d3 attacks the d5 knight a third time, and it's only defended twice. Black has little choice but to play king h8 to relieve the pin, which the original knight sacrifice on f7 has led to. If he tries to defend it with rook d6, White can simply take the e5 pawn, and Black will still lose the knight. After the king moves, White now takes the d5 knight with bishop takes d5, winning back the material he sacrificed. Black plays rook d6, and White now takes the e5 pawn with rook takes e5. At this point, White is 2 pawns up, and there's no coming back for Black. He will remain on the back foot for the rest of the game. Karpov tries to activate his bishop, while White continues to consolidate pressure on the king side. Black could exchange here if he wanted, but that's usually not a good idea when you're down material, and he's lost not 1 pawn but 2. So instead, he wants to get his bishop over to help in his king's defense, so he plays bishop c6. White could also trade here, but he prefers to keep the centralized and incredibly strong bishop where it is for now. So instead, he tries to improve his other bishop, playing bishop c1. He now has the threat of bishop f4 attacking both rooks. Black plays bishop d7, attacking White's rook first. White moves it out of danger to h5, where now the threat is for a bishop sacrifice on h6 to open up a lethal attack on Black's king. Black plays bishop e8 in order to stop this. White has to move his rook now, so it's back to f5. And now with bishop g6, Karpov has managed to maneuver his bishop successfully to his king's defense. White plays bishop f4 with the attack on both the rooks, and Black is forced to trade down at this point. However, after the bishops and rooks are exchanged, he is able to regain a pawn when all is said and done, with bishop takes c4. This wasn't an oversight on Fischer's part, however. He later admitted he had willingly parted with it in order to entice Black to trade, confident all he needed was 1 extra pawn. And apparently, Karpov agreed. After bishop f3, Black plays queen f8 to offer a queen trade, but Fischer declines it with queen e6. And here, on move 40, just before they were to retire for the day, Black played bishop takes b4 and resigned. White's next move would likely be queen takes a5. And once the queens and rooks eventually trade off, White's pawn majority on the king side would be all Fischer needed to win. And so game 3 ends with a short, decisive victory for Bobby Fischer, the first win of the match. However, this was by no means the final answer to what analysts at the time called the Spanish question. Could Karpov find a way to beat Fischer in the Ruy Lopez, or should he abandon the idea altogether? Well, he didn't abandon the idea, and they went on to play 5 more games of the match with the Spanish opening, all of them with Fischer as white. Specifically, games 7, 11, 19, 27, and 31. My plan is to analyze those games next, skipping over games with other openings for now, and we'll return to those later. While we are going out of order, I think it'll be a more coherent narrative to see how their strategies have evolved over a series of similar games. While here and there the players would throw in a new or novel opening, they primarily would return again and again to familiar terrain: the Ruy Lopez, the Sicilian, and the English. So I'd like to tackle the games how they are thematically linked, not necessarily the order in which they were played. And eventually, if I do manage to get all the games posted, you can watch them in any order you choose. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned, and thanks for watching.